Hello, and welcome to the Empowerography Podcast. This is a platform created for women's voices to be heard and a place to share their stories, journeys, and successes with the world for the purpose of helping other women who might be on similar journeys. We are empowering women one episode at a time. I'm your host, Brad Walsh, so kick back, grab one of your favorite beverages, and enjoy the stories. The world needs to hear your message and your story, so don't deny the world of that gift within you that the universe has given you. Someone out there needs to hear your story because it will support them in feeling hope, inspired, and even transformed. Do you want to discover how I help get my clients out of their own way, show up, and confidently share their message? I would love to extend an invitation to you to join me in my free masterclass, Start Your Own Podcast from Idea to Implementation, on Wednesday, April 5th at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can find the registry link in the show notes. Hope to see you there. Hello there, Brad Walsh here, your host of the Empowerography Podcast. Today, my guest is Cindy Tank Murphy. She is a best-selling author, an international speaker, and a mental health advocate. Welcome, Cindy. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great, Brad. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so happy, honored, and excited to have you here. I cannot wait to jump in and share about all the beautiful light you put out into the world through all the work you're doing, and to share a little bit about your story and your journey. So with that being said, let us jump right in. How long have you been working and advocating in the field of mental health?
That's a great question, Brad. And usually what I like to say is that my whole life kind of is a culmination of what this work has become. But if I had to put a date, a line in the sand, it was really a moment in my life that changed my life forever. And so I kind of look at my life in pre-losing my father to suicide and post-losing my father to suicide. So the last 10 years, my father passed on July 22nd, 2014. So that was when the line in the sand was drawn, and I knew I needed to do something. And to really understand the culmination, you kind of have to go back into my story, which I'm sure you'll ask me to tell in a little bit. But I would say the last 10 years has been when I've really developed the understanding that this was a calling for me.
Yeah. Now, let's just jump right into that. I know you have quite a story around the whole mental health and how you got into the advocacy work. Mm-hmm. So can you share a little bit about your personal journey with mental health and what motivated you to become a mental health advocate?
Yeah. So I mentioned it starts really in my childhood. I grew up in a rural community in Northeast Iowa, population less than 3,500 people. I had a wonderful childhood, loving family, loving parents. By all external appearances, my family was a typical Midwestern family, but there was one thing that was a little bit different, or what I like to say was a little off balance. And that was, I was living in a family where a parent was struggling with mental illness. And so that can be a volatile place to be raised in as a young child. It can be confusing at times, not understanding how daddy can be happy and joyful and playing with you one day, and the next day just very agitated and disruptive and downright mean. So that was just my upbringing, and I didn't think really anything different about that. That was just what I knew. And then I remember the very first time I learned of anyone taking their life by suicide, I was in the 4th grade. So I was about the age of 9 years old, and my elementary school principal died by suicide. And I remember the look on my teachers' faces, the distraught, just the fear, the feelings. And in my very young mind, I thought to myself, why would anyone want to take their life, or why would anyone want to kill themselves? That was a really impressionable moment for me. And as I grew up in my small community, unfortunately, there were several people I knew that had passed by suicide. And in a community that small, you start to question, why is this happening?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. You think about the rate of heart disease, and you think about these things, and you're like, why are there so many in this rural community? As I grew, it wasn't until my teenage years that I really fully understood my father's mental illness and what he was dealing with. He had been drafted in Vietnam. He had been honorably discharged because of a mental breakdown. This was all before I was born. But I started to learn these things. And when I was about 15, 16 years old, he had another episode where he was suicidal, was hospitalized. At the same time, my mom was also hospitalized. It was just a lot for her to overcome. So I was dealing with two parents that were really struggling. And I had siblings. I was the oldest of four. And so I became kind of a caretaker for the family. So after that, I went on to college, started my first career. Again, I felt like suicide was following me.
Yeah.
I remember on my 24th birthday, a man jumped to his death in a parking garage across from where I worked. I mean, these were all very poignant things in my life. And as I continued, I began my career, I began my life with my husband, and we started to have children. At a very young age, my daughter, my oldest daughter, started to have panic attacks. That started in about the 4th grade.
Jeez.
And panic attacks, not just your, breathing, hyperventilating, but to the point where an ambulance is called to the school to take her to the emergency room, put her on oxygen, give her some medication to calm her down. And I was just fearful at that time of what's going on. What do I do? And not really getting a lot of help from the medical professionals to say, this is what you need to do. I was kind of left out on my own. So we started therapy and things with her very young age. And then, of course, my father passed by suicide in 2014. And that was like really the turning point for me. I'm like, okay, I've had all these imprints, these memories, these things. I'm dealing with a daughter that has obviously some severe challenges in her mental state, and I need to do something. And what that was going to be at the time, but I just began to educate myself. And that's where I started. And in 2016, about a year and a half after losing my father, I was struggling to keep my career going, maintain my own mental health, advocate for my daughter. And I left the corporate world for a couple of years, and I went on what I called my leap of faith journey. That was taking me down some paths of some things that were very kind of scary for me, but I knew this is what I needed to do. It was just very clear. It was like, this is what I needed. Every time I would get a sign, this is what I need to do. And one of those signs was I was invited to speak at a women's professional retreat in San Diego. And I didn't know what my topic was going to be, but I'm like, well, what's evolving around me right now? It's suicide. It's this mental illness and keeping my daughter safe, all of these things. And so I literally Googled, why have so many people died by suicide in New Hampton, Iowa? That's my childhood hometown, and kind of a strange place to go, but I didn't know what else to do. And lo and behold, the top of the Google page was an article about a woman coming to my hometown, New Hampton, Iowa, that evening, the day that I Googled it, to speak to a group of people about mental health and about losing her 12-year-old daughter to suicide. There was no coincidence. The sign was just like right there in my face. Yeah. So I knew I needed to reach out to this woman. Her name was Christine. I needed to learn about Morgan's story. And that's where it all kind of started. I began to have conversations with her, and then I went on to tell Morgan's story, Morgan and Christine's story. It was easier for me to tell their story than my own in the beginning, right? So I began to tell anyone who would listen to it. I spoke to just groups of people, and it just might be, I probably annoyed people at the time, but I was so passionate about sharing this story. And so fast forward another year later, I'm traveling to New Zealand, and I'm going to speak on an international stage and tell this story again. And I shared the story. I spoke about losing my father. And I was traveling with a lot of people that I felt like they really knew what they were doing. They were kind of gurus in their own professions and things like that. And I felt like kind of a small person on the stage, to be honest, going into it. But when I left that stage and realized the impact that I had, and the people that came up to me afterwards and said, I've lost someone as well, and I've kept that a secret. And that was the point that I knew this is what I'm supposed to do. I knew I was supposed to write a book. I was supposed to tell my story. I was supposed to tell other people's stories. I was supposed to, by me sharing my story and being vulnerable, I was allowing or giving permission to others to share their story. And that's where this all began.
That's a huge burden or load to carry when you keep that secret and not share it and not tell it. Tamping that down is very unhealthy, but it's hard to speak that out into the world and hard to share that with people because it's so personal. And to have seen suicide even before your father passed, all of the suicide around you, it brought up something for me, because I remember, now that you mentioned that, the fact that you heard of and dealt with that at that age. I remember I was living in a smaller town from Toronto, when I was 10 years old. And I can remember there were 3 sisters. We were all friends. I lived in a townhouse community, so we knew all the kids. And there were 3 sisters. And one of them came home to find their mother hanging in the basement. She had committed suicide. She had found her mother. And that was my first introduction at the age of 10 to that. I'd never heard of suicide before. And it leaves an indelible mark on you. Like it's a lot, especially as a kid. And then to have it, as you said, following you and then your father. And so I can totally understand your passion for wanting to help. When something like that touches your life, you can't help but do something. You want to do something about it. It's like me with my girls being bullied. I have to do something. This, like the photography, the podcast, all of that came out of as a result of what they went through. When it touches you that closely and hits your heart in that way, you can't help but do something about it and do your best to advocate and speak about it. You, as you said, sometimes these people must get sick of hearing this over and over, but I'm sorry, but this is on my heart. I have to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's my purpose.
It is. Yeah. It's not, I always say this, I say, I wanted to write a book, but this would never have been the topic I would have chosen. It chose me. Yeah,
exactly. And that's like the advocacy work. It chose you. You didn't seek it out. It chose you. And that's the way I feel about the work I do. And it's an incredible thing when that happens, I think that's part of when we find our purpose. It's not like we go looking for it. It finds us. And you don't have a choice in this. You have to do this. It's on your heart. So you have to do this work. I applaud your strength and your courage and getting up on stage and sharing it, because I can only imagine how hard that first time must have been for you. Yeah. So I applaud your courage and your strength and your resilience, and of course the incredible work you're doing, because mental health is such a horrible thing that so many people struggle with. And we'll talk about all of this as we get through the conversation. But Cindy, what fuels your passion then for mental health, and how has it evolved throughout your journey?
Well, I think it's just that it's the people that I've touched in seeing what has transpired because of it. One example is a woman I wrote about in my book. I told her story. I met with her for 2 hours and she shared her story. She hadn't even shared with her own family what had happened, what had transpired on the day that she lost her spouse to suicide. And it's a pretty traumatic story. And this was 20 years ago, Brad. And I spent 2 hours talking with her and listening and just allowing her to share that. And literally 2 months later, she reached out to me and said, Cindy, I am now telling my story. She gave a testament to her church. I mean, here's a woman who had kept that to herself for 20 years and now was able to release it because I was willing just to listen to her. And she felt validated. She felt that, okay, it's not so fearful anymore. So that's
what an incredible gift you gave her. That is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Just so inspiring. And so what inspires you or lights you up the most about the work you do as a mental health advocate?
Well, just that I shared. And then also I've been doing, so most recently, I talked about my daughter and the struggles that she's been through and will continue for her whole life. She's got a very severe mental illness, but to see her develop and work through her own pain and trauma that she's experienced and now become a speaker herself. It's so rewarding. She's ready for us to start a podcast, to do a mother-daughter thing. So yeah, those are the things that light me up about it. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Just seeing the impact that each one of us can make. And it can be very simple things.
It's so funny because you hear so many people, and I was one of these people at one point too. You hear people say, well, I'm only one person. What difference can I make? And that is, nothing could be further from the truth, because it just takes one person to start the conversation, to start talking about it. Now, one person can't change the world, but what you can do is start talking about it, which will then create a ripple effect, and other people will get on board and start to help further the mission. And that's exactly what I've experienced. That's exactly what you're experiencing. And we can make a difference. It takes just one person to get started. We are one spoke in a wheel. So you get more and more people involved. And it is beautiful to see that ripple effect and to see other people jump on board and cheerlead you and support you and help you in that mission, whatever that mission may be. But one person can make a difference. Absolutely. Because it always starts with one person.
It does. And I always say, if you're in a situation where you're dealing with someone, a loved one that is struggling, the first place to start is with yourself.
Yes.
Get yourself and get your own mental health in order and educate yourself and do all the work you need to do to get yourself to that place that you can then help someone. It's the old adage, put your oxygen mask on first before you help someone else. It is so true. It is so true.
Everything starts here with us. Everything in life. We are the foundation for all of it. And if you don't get yourself right, you can't be in and of service to others. You cannot. You have to get yourself right first in order to help others. That's how they're going to benefit. But on the flip side of that, you got to look at it because we've been conditioned all our lives to believe that putting ourselves first is selfish, right? So we have to shift that. And I think that we have to have a conversation around that because I believe with all of my heart and soul, Cindy, that conversation is the catalyst for change. That's how we're going to get stuff done. That's how we're going to get shit done, is to talk about it. That's the only way. That's where it starts. That's the starting point. Talk about it. And we have to go into these conversations with an open heart, an open mind, and open ears, because people don't know how to listen. They really don't. For the most part, they don't. They're listening to respond. So we need to shift it.
Exactly. And when in that same vein, when you're talking, like I like to tell parents, if you're having difficulty communicating, in which everybody does struggle with teens, right? As you see that escalation, because there's an escalation that can sometimes happen, we have to remember that we have to step into that conversation with compassion and empathy and understanding. Yeah. And it's very difficult as a parent when you see your child doing things that you're like, this is not right. I need to set boundaries. And all those things are important. But I try to tell parents, listen, you can't just set boundaries without sharing love. They have to be embedded in, I care about you. I love you. Let's have a conversation about this, versus a lot of times there's just this back and forth arguing, and it doesn't help the situation. But
yeah, for sure.
The conversation is important.
This is the other thing, right? We have to be able to have those difficult conversations that people don't want to have. Unfortunately, we have to have them in order to move forward with things. You have to be able to have the difficult conversations, because if you don't, nothing's going to change.
Yeah. And that difficult conversation for me was literally sitting down with my daughter and asking her if she didn't want to live anymore. Yeah. I mean, that's the point, that we teach our kids about sex and drugs and all of these other social media. We teach them about these things. We also need to teach them about, if you get to the point where you're feeling that you are a burden, you don't want to be here anymore, this is a time you need to come to me and we need to have a conversation. We need to teach them that up front, and we need to emulate that in our own conversations with ourselves. Sure. And so it should be just one of those things you put on your parent list of things to talk about.
Well, I think that we need to, from a very young age with our children, we need to establish that there is an open line of communication always, no matter what it's about. Your kids know that they can come to you and talk to you about anything, whether it be drugs, alcohol, bullying, mental health, everything. You need to have that open line of communication always. That needs to be established. I think if we do that from a very young age, the kids will just grow up not knowing any different. It becomes embedded in who they are, and they know that they can come to you and talk to you. It's so important.
True. Yep, absolutely.
So on the flip side of what inspires you and lights you up about the work you do, what is one of the most difficult parts for you?
Well, it's working with people that have lost someone to suicide. I mean, in hearing the tragedies, there's trauma, there's shame, there's guilt. So when anyone, in any sort of loss, deep sorrow, but with a suicide, there is these added layers, I call them, of shame, guilt. Why did this happen? What did I do wrong? All of these additional layers that don't come with a normal loss of grief. And so that's the hardest part, is really trying to help people through that and understand that they did nothing wrong. This was not their decision. This was their loved one's decision. And this was a disease. I try to teach people, and this is something that I learned very early on that helped me, is just like a heart condition can go undiagnosed. Yeah. And someone can die of a heart attack. A mental health condition can go undiagnosed and they can die by suicide. It's no different. Our brain health is no different than any other organ in our body. And we need to treat it that way. And we need to be open. That's part of my advocacy, is just, let's just have conversations. Yes, these are tough conversations, but the more we have these conversations, we normalize it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we make it less scary. And we make it less shameful and all of those other things.
Or we make it easier to talk about, which is the key. How has being a mental health advocate and your personal journey with mental health contributed to your own personal growth and understanding of human nature?
Well, boy, that's a good question. I would say that I feel like my personal experience has given me knowledge in a way that's different than a person that studied it. So I'll give you an example. My daughter sat on a panel and she said, Mom, there were people with a PhD sitting next to me on this side and a PhD on this side. And I was answering the questions alongside them. And I said, Avery, what you don't understand is you have a PhD in lived experience.
Yes.
And I said, that is sometimes way more impactful.
Oh, I think all the time. I think it's always more impactful.
And so that's, I guess, to answer your question, I mean, I feel like I've got a PhD in this, in my lived experience. And that's what's changed me in my thinking, because I used to think I had to go to all these experts to learn what I needed to do when I had that inner wisdom in me the whole time.
I think that trumps book smarts any day of the week. Always. I mean, listen, people with PhDs and all these, yes, they have the education behind them around it and a different perspective than someone who is lived experience. A lot of, and I can't speak for all people that have PhDs and work in the mental health field in that regard, but I think that people who have lived experience have a very different perspective than someone who is just book smart and has not experienced it. Now, I'm sure some have that PhDs that have the book smarts and all those things, but nothing trumps lived experience, I believe. Life experience. It's you think about even in the job market, someone who's got, as my wife calls it, alphabet soup behind their name.
Yep.
That's what she calls it, right? But they don't have a fucking clue what they're doing in the position they're in. Whereas someone who has been working in that area for X amount of years, I'm sorry, if this person over here has been working in this field for 10 years versus this person that has alphabet soup that just read about it, sorry, this person should get the job that has the experience time and time again over the person that has alphabet soup. I don't give a shit. Those things don't mean anything. It's a piece of paper.
It is, exactly.
That's all it is. And hundreds of thousands of dollars you spent on your education.
That's true as well.
What personal challenges have you faced in your advocacy work and how have you overcome them?
Well, I would say the biggest one is fear. That's the one that I had to conquer the most, is just get over my own fear. Fear is just false evidence appearing real. And so I think, lucky for me, I guess I learned at a very young age that when I felt something was fearful, I needed to attack it like head on. I just needed to face it. I needed to overcome it in some way, take a step closer to it, whatever that was. Because once you do that, you realize, oh, that was false evidence. That really isn't as fearful as I made it out to be. And so that was my biggest, I guess, obstacle to overcome.
And that's usually the case. We blow things way out of proportion. We make things out to be a lot bigger than they really are. We are our own worst enemies. We are our biggest hurdles for sure.
We are. Yep.
What are some common misconceptions about mental health that you encounter and how do you address them?
Well, I think we've probably all grown up with some of these phrases like suck it up, cheer up, things will get better, put on a happy face. We've been told and programmed as children that we can will away some of these emotional dysregulation that we have in ourselves. And unfortunately, when you're dealing with a mental illness, that is not the case. This is not something that someone can just will away or can overcome it. And I think because we've been told that so much, unfortunately, then we start to believe in ourselves that, why can't I just get over this? Everyone tells me I'm just going through a phase. I should be able to get over it. It just escalates the problem. It just continues that loop of the self-talk of why I'm not worthy. And so the willpower, there's this perception that a person is lazy. I don't believe anyone's lazy. I believe that they are challenged by either difficult thoughts and patterns that are disrupting their life. I've seen depression at its worst phases where a person's not able to get out of bed, not able to brush their teeth, not able to shower. That's not laziness. That is the disease taking hold in such a way. And I think these are misconceptions that we have. I think there's misconceptions around suicide and that it's a selfish act. It is not a selfish act at all. In fact, the person who's living in that mindset is actually thinking about their loved ones and thinking that they're better off without them because they're a burden. There's a slew of them. But those would be the top ones that I would pick.
I'm going to be completely honest here. I used to be one of those people that thought that I think that's very selfish, and I think it's weak that someone would do that. But obviously my thoughts have evolved around it. And I mean, on my wife's side of the family, there's a lot of mental health, depression, anxiety, panic, all of these things. And so I still don't fully understand it. I still have work to do to fully understand it because my wife has very serious panic attacks, like really bad. So I know I need to do my work to learn more about it. But I used to be one of those people that thought that's weak. What the hell? Come on. It's not that easy. You don't know what goes on in someone's mind until you walk a mile in their shoes. You have no idea.
Yeah. And most times these people, they've been thinking these thoughts for a long time and they may not externally express that. They may be the most, I mean, you think about some of these famous people that have taken their lives and you would have never guessed that, right? They're at the top of their games, but they were dealing with that their entire lives. So there's this dichotomy going on of this is who I portray myself to be, but this is what I think of myself internally. And
keeping up appearances, right? You appear to be living this way, but it's completely different internally.
It's the opposite.
How do you take care of and protect your own mental health while advocating for others? Because that's something that you have to do as well, especially working in the field that you do, dealing with all of the stories that you hear. So what do you do to take care of yourself?
Oh, that's a great question, Brad. The beauty of taking care of your mental health is that if you take care of your physical health, you're also covering your mental health. So I will say to people, exercise regularly, drink lots of water, maybe stay away from alcohol and caffeine as much as possible, eat a clean, healthy diet, all of those things, reduce your stress. Those are all things that we do for our physical health. And guess what? They help our mental health as well. Right. But above that, I do things that are very techniques like grounding techniques. Meditation is a really big important part of my life. And now there's science behind why meditation is so powerful in lowering blood pressure and cholesterol and cortisol. It's the science is amazing. And so those are things, as well as I trained in Reiki healing. So I've worked with some energy work. You can do Reiki on yourself. I don't know if people know that, but you can. So those are all things that I try to practice. It's easier said than done because we all get busy, but those are things that when I realize my life is starting to get I feel the anxiety or I feel that those things bubbling up, that's when I know I need to go back to my practices.
Yeah. I think it's so important to have somewhat of a routine. I call it my MMJ practices, my movement, meditation, and journaling every morning. Now, that's not to say I'm perfect with it. I fall off sometimes, but I try my best to get out. I'll get up at 6:30 in the morning, go for a walk, come home, take a shower, come downstairs to my office before I do any work, before I check any emails, meditate, and then I journal. Then I get into my work. But movement is so important. And when you said exercise, you don't have to go to the gym. You could just go out for a walk. Like I go for a walk for an hour every morning. And that's my form of exercise. I get out, enjoy of course now in the summer weather, enjoy the sunshine and the birds chirping. And that's it. It reinvigorates me. I just love that I get to do that. And it does help with everything, with your mental well-being, with your physical health, all of it. It's so important.
All intertwined.
And you don't have to do all three. Just find one thing at least. Movement, I would say, is probably the most important. So get out and go for a walk every day. You don't have to go for an hour walk. You can do half an hour. You can do 15 minutes. Just get out in nature and walk, move your body. So who or what has been your greatest source of support throughout your advocacy journey?
Well, I would say my family, because without my family, I wouldn't be doing any of this. My husband, number one, he's always believed in me. He's always believed in my intuition. So that's been amazing. And then through writing the book and everything that I did, I wanted to make sure that I was honoring my family and that I didn't want any hard feelings or any emotional turmoil because of that. So I needed to make sure that was in place. But without having that family structure, I don't think I'd be able to do any of the work that I do.
I love it.
That support.
I still think, and I'm sure you'll agree, mental health awareness is nowhere near where it should be or where it needs to be. And again, it goes back to what we said about talking about it. There's not enough conversation about it. And I think it's still swept under the rug. Like it's a dirty little secret. I mean, I don't think it's as bad as when our parents were growing up, but it's still not where it should be. So why do you think that it's still so stigmatized, in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, it's because it's shame-based. So it goes back to us again being raised that we're supposed to control our emotions. We're supposed to be able to not have these feelings. It's a silly thing.
We're emotive.
Our emotion. Yes, this is who we are as human beings.
Yeah.
And the way our brains tell us there's something wrong is by showing us these emotions. That's its sign. Hello.
Yeah.
I'm overwhelmed. I'm whatever it is. But yet we deny that. We deny that and we shame ourselves into thinking that I should just be able to fix this. I don't know why there's this thought that mental strength, you have to have this great mental strength to be a great human or whatever, but your emotions are so important in telling you what's going on with you. Just if I had pain in my knee or if I had heart palpitations or whatever my symptoms are, if I'm having overwhelming thoughts and feelings and these emotions, that's a symptom as well that we need to take heed to. But I believe that it's rooted in a shame-based mentality. And so that's why it's so difficult to get out of that.
I think that's a really big thing with boys, actually, because we as boys are told when we're being raised, when we're growing up, stop acting like a little girl, stop crying like a girl. You can't show emotions, put on your big boy pants. And so I think that's part of where it needs to start, is letting our boys know, again, it goes back to starting from a very young age, that it's okay to show your emotions. I thankfully, because I was raised by two women, my mom and my grandmother, I had that instilled in me that it's okay. But a lot of boys don't have that. And that needs to change. We need to start there with our boys, and not discounting the girls, but I think it's something that boys experience more in that regard, that they can't show their emotions. And so that just gets bred into them. And then as they turn into adults, emotionally crippled. They don't know how to show their emotions.
They don't know how to do it. Yeah.
So that needs to change. And with girls too, of course, but I think it's just more prevalent with boys because of the way we're raised, the way we grow up, and the conditioning that we go through. Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously different conditioning that girls go through.
Yes. For sure.
You're exactly right on the point about suck it up. I mean, that is, I don't know how many times you hear that, especially I've been on a lot of soccer fields, or I've been on a lot of sporting events and things like that. And boy, you hear that over, and that is, you kind of think, what are we training our children to be, robots? Are we training them not to have any sort of emotion or feel and sense things that are happening to them? I don't know. You're right. We need to change it.
I think it's a fine line though, because you also, as a parent, you have to let your kids fail. You have to let them go through shit and figure stuff out on their own. So it's a very fine line to walk. It's like, where is the point where you cross the line and you're coddling your children, where you're not letting them experience things in life like failure and all of these things? Because there are a lot of helicopter parents, as they call them.
Right.
That's a very fine line, but we do have to instill emotional well-being in our kids and let them know that it is okay to have emotions.
It's okay to, yes, exactly. And I think that's the difference, is that no matter what the emotion is, if you're angry about something, if you're sad about something, let's just talk about what's causing it. Let's get to the root cause is really what that's about.
Exactly. 100%. In your opinion, then, aside from what we've already talked about in terms of having conversation, how else do you think we can start to make bigger strides and bring more awareness and shine a light on mental health?
So I think that there's several things. I would say it starts with the healthcare system. Unfortunately, we have some major failures in our healthcare, and especially around mental illness.
Yeah.
I'll give you one example. Actually, I may give you a couple examples, but they're pretty surprising or shocking in my opinion. This was several years ago, but I was an adult. I was in an emergency room due to heart palpitations, symptoms from what I would consider panic attack kind of symptoms, right? And so in an emergency room and getting treated, and the nurse came in. All of a sudden, these sirens went off, code blue, whatever. And the nurse came in and almost apologized to me and said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to stay here in this room and we're going to have to go deal with something else. And the comment that came out of her mouth was what was so shocking. She said, we don't like to help people who don't want to live. So it was apparent this was a suicide victim that was coming into the emergency room. And I thought to myself, I'm coming in as a person who's having symptoms that could escalate to that point. And obviously, again, another one of those things that I've checked in my box of things to remember. So I think that our healthcare system has been failing us in some ways, and we need to do better. We need to do better. We have to have better outcomes for patients. And I would extend that even further. Like, I live in a very resourceful community. I'm in the suburbs of Chicago. I have a behavioral health hospital that's less than a mile from my house. Most people don't have, there's maybe 2,000 behavioral health hospitals across the country. Most people don't have that luxury. So if I'm struggling with resources, if I'm not able to get the help that I see is needed, I can only imagine what people in areas that don't have the resources are going through. So that would be first and foremost as far as what we need to do as a society, or what needs to happen to.
Well, the healthcare system, as you mentioned, it does not get to the root cause. All it does is put a Band-Aid over a bullet hole with everything in the healthcare system. Our healthcare system up here in Canada is broken too. We've got 6 to 8 hour waits in emergency rooms. It's insane. Yeah. It's absolutely the healthcare system. Well, let's be honest, all the systems, the education, they all need to be burned to the ground and started over again, because they don't provide what we need.
They were developed in an era that it's no longer. They have not evolved with what we're dealing with today, is what I would say. And we don't have enough professionals in mental health. I mean, it takes 6 months to get in to see a psychiatrist on average. And when someone's going through mental health crisis and is in crisis mode, they don't have 6 months to wait.
Absolutely not.
So yeah, it's a challenge.
Shit needs to change.
Yes. Yes.
How has your perspective on mental health evolved since you first started advocating, and what key insights have you gained?
Well, I guess really this understanding that we need to treat mental health as in a compassionate manner. And that starts with community involvement. I mean, you think about all of the crisis that you see with police officers. Most of the time today, they're going into situations where there's a mental health issue going on, a mental disturbance. Those are the things that they're getting called to. And we still don't understand how to de-escalate. We still don't understand how to help someone in a crisis situation. But the beauty is we all could be trained in that. There are techniques and there are things to learn. And so that's, again, part of my advocacy is touting, get trained in mental health awareness.
Especially when you're working in emergency services like the police, fire department, ambulance, and EMS and all of that stuff. They should be trained in all of that stuff. They need to allocate the money, the budget to get their staff trained. It's so important because mental health is on the rise incredibly, and we need to do all that we can to help and support. What does advocacy mean to you on a personal level, and how do you embody it in your daily life?
Well, to me, it just means that I'm not afraid to have the tough conversations. That's really, it boils down to just that. So if someone's struggling, I will ask them point blank, hey, I can sense that you're struggling. I mean, it's being aware of your surroundings and acting upon it, acting upon your impulses. We all have intuition. We all know when something's off, and just not shying away from it.
How has sharing your own vulnerabilities and experiences influenced your advocacy work and connection with others?
It's everything. I mean, that's my strength, is being vulnerable. Like I said before, that's what allows other people or gives them permission to share their story or be vulnerable as well. So I have to be vulnerable in order to do the work that I do.
And what message of hope would you like to share with individuals who may be currently struggling with some mental health issues?
First and foremost, that they're not alone. The statistics, unfortunately, are very shocking, but 1 in 5 U.S. adults are dealing with a mental illness. 1 in 5 U.S. youth between the ages of 3 and 17 are dealing with a mental illness. It is so. I just want people to understand every single one of us will go through a moment in our life where our mental health is not in balance, because we all will go through some sort of emotional turmoil, trauma, whatever. We'll all experience that. So there's no shame in asking for help. There's no shame in saying, I need to go to the doctor because something's just off. Something's not right. Or I need to see a therapist. I need to start talking this through. Whatever that is, whatever that therapy is for you, seek it out, know that you're not alone, and find the support that you need.
I've heard people talk about therapy versus, say, coaching when it comes to this stuff. And I've heard people say that therapy, to some people, doesn't seem as helpful because you're just staying stuck in what you're struggling with because you're constantly talking about it. There's no moving
Mhm.
forward with it. Whereas coaching in different aspects helps you move forward. You're not constantly reliving and constantly stuck in that.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I believe in several techniques, DBT, behavioral, any type of behavioral. And it also depends on the therapist, right?
Right.
You need a therapist that understands what is going to work for you. But there are techniques. So a behavioral therapy would not just allow you to be stuck in that.
Mhm.
It is a mind shift. You're shifting your thoughts from what's causing you to think this way today, and let's reframe that in a different way. And I get the coaching thing. I think that there's different levels. I think for every person, it depends. But if you truly are struggling with mental health,
Mhm.
I think you need to see a therapist that
Right.
is trained. There are techniques. There's EMDR, which is an eye movement that helps for trauma. There are so many new techniques, I think, that are on the rise,
Mhm.
and therapies that are being scientifically tested and
They come
researched
from
right
the
now.
Eastern world versus the Western world.
Yes, exactly. So I think that there's multiple ways to go about it, but find what works for you.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
I think that Western versus Eastern has its own set of challenges, though, because you think about we'll say, old dogs, new tricks thing.
Yeah.
These therapists who have been doing this stuff for years, they don't believe in it. It's too woo or it's too out there. And no, we can't get into that. And I think this goes for the healthcare system in general, too. I think that we need to bridge that gap between Eastern and Western and work together, because that will provide. We can't discount Western medicine. We just can't. It's needed.
No,
But I think that if we bring the two together to work together, the results will be phenomenal.
Yeah. It's treating the whole body. It's treating the whole body versus the symptoms. Yes.
Now, as mentioned, you are an author. I would love for you to speak about the book, title, subject matter, what the experience was like for you writing that, and how cathartic was that for you?
Okay. So the book is called The Strength to Live. I actually I'll show you the copy of it right here.
Mm-hmm.
It's finding hope and healing after the loss of a suicide. And again, like I said, after my experience in New Zealand, I had the epiphany that this is what I needed to do. I had a publisher, and when I turned in my first manuscript, the funny thing was she said, "Cindy, you have 3 books in here." And I said, "Yes, I kind of know that, but here's why I need to have 3 books in here." So I cover the healing, and I give healing practices. I call them healing moments for people that have lost a loved one, right? But I wanted this to be a book for everyone. Anyone can pick this book up. And in most cases, most people know at least someone that has died by suicide, so it's helpful for them. But then I also bring in a lot of the education that I've had and trying to really wrap people's minds around, let's change our thought process around mental health as a whole. Going back to the things I mentioned, as far as getting rid of the stigma, getting rid of these false narratives around why people can't just will this away. I interviewed so many people and got so much wealth of information I put in the book. And then I also talk about my personal experience of losing my father, but also dealing with a daughter with a severe mental disorder. And I share stories in there about what's transpired and how we can make it better. And so there's the parent perspective of dealing with a child. There's a child perspective of losing a father and growing up with this. There are a lot of things that are covered in the book, but that's because it's a book that anyone can pick up and read.
And you've got 3 books in there.
And I got
That's
books.
incredible.
She said if I want to write some more, I guess I've got material.
Yeah, you got a couple more to do, and all the material's there. You just got to mold it and work with it. I think that's incredible. Right. What do you think your unique skill set or superpower is that's helped you become successful?
I think it's my inner strength. It's my own strength to just keep moving forward, to just keep growing and changing and transforming and learning. That's my power.
Speaking of success, how do you define that word? What does the word success mean to you?
I think it's staying balanced in my own keeping my mental health balanced, staying aware, staying focused on what I need to do to ensure that I am in a good place so that the rest of my family all flourishes because of it.
What would you say is one of the most important things you've learned in your life? And what was your life like before you learned it? And what was your life like after learning it?
I'm probably going to go back to that conquering fear. I think that writing the book, everything that I've done, being able to sit here with you and talk about this without having a bunch of emotions bubbling up. And I feel like that's the key to life, is just we're all going to be challenged with things in our lives, and it's going to be uncomfortable. But it's how we deal with that. It's how we respond to it. And I always say you can become bitter or you can become better. And I choose to become better. So
That's the way to do it. That's the choice. We got to remember that's all we have control over is our own emotions and our own reactions. We can't control how other people are going to react or what other people are going to say or how they feel. It's about realizing that that's all we have control over and maintaining that balance, that grounded balance for ourselves, for our own mental well-being, our own health, all of those things.
Absolutely.
What does the word empowerment mean to you?
I think it means controlling my own destiny. Kind of going back to that, I'm in control of what I want my life to be. And I think empowerment is, it's easy to say that I'm empowered in when things are going well, but we also can be empowered when things go tragically wrong. And that's probably the bigger lesson, is to be empowered enough to get yourself through those challenges and those obstacles in life.
That's the real test right there, is when times are tough.
Yep.
Your resiliency, for sure.
Exactly.
Okay, we're going to jump into a little rapid fire section. So the next grouping of questions just be 2, 3, 4-word answer type thing, okay?
Okay.
How would you describe yourself in one word?
Evolving.
If you could teach the world one thing, what would it be?
Accept failure.
If you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
Compassion.
What is one thing you love about yourself that is not related to your physical appearance?
That inner strength again.
What is one thing you want but cannot buy with money?
Good health.
If you were writing your autobiography, what would the title be?
I guess I've got a theme here, but maybe she conquered her fear and she prevailed in it, or prevailed because of it.
The fear thing. I love it. It's such a huge 4-letter word. Like it's so everybody's affected by it at some point or the other. It's just a matter of how we deal with it and how we, as you say, conquer it.
Yep.
If you could set up a billboard anywhere in the world, where would you put it and what would it say?
Well, the anywhere could be anywhere, because honestly, this needs to be said everywhere. But it would be a billboard that said, because I'm a big believer in signs. Obviously, I've shared a few that have come in my life. And so it would be a billboard that said, if you're looking for a sign to stay alive, this is it.
I love that. That concludes our rapid fire section. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. I created a question that I did not send you ahead of time. If you could take one feeling or one belief and bottle it up and give it to people, what would it be?
Empathy.
If you could step into my shoes, what question would you have asked yourself that I didn't ask you?
I would probably have asked, what could I do if I'm in a situation where I notice someone's in a mental health crisis? Because I think with the statistics the way they are, it's not a matter of if this will happen, it's when will it happen, and will you be prepared, really? And so I go back to, there's a training called QPR, just like CPR. It stands for question, persuade, refer. And that technique can be used really in a lot of situations, but it starts with just that open dialogue and questioning a person. And then if it gets to the point where you realize this is more of a crisis, you refer them or you persuade them and you take them to a place of safety. You actually help them along in their journey. So it's a beautiful training.
Thank you for sharing that. What is your why, Cindy?
My daughters and my family, my husband.
What is something surprising that you've learned about yourself in the past year?
Well, I think I probably relearn this one over and over, but it is to allow things to happen for me instead of pushing them and trying to make them happen. There's a saying, accept and allow and don't ask how.
Yes.
And that is something that I have to relearn every year, is just being open to the flow of good things and allowing good things to happen instead of pushing and grinding and thinking I have to make it happen. Because there's so much that can just come to us if we just almost be still in the moment sometimes.
Trust and allow. Yes, 100%. And it's honestly, it's not for us to figure out the how. It will happen. Just trust in the process. And that's not to say just sit back and expect everything to fall in your lap and happen, but you have to trust the process and allow for things to happen. You have to be open to receiving them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you had the opportunity to sit down and have a 1-hour conversation with one woman, any woman in the world, who would it be and why? Brene
Brown, for sure. So someone that has studied vulnerability and courage and empathy and shame. I just would love to have a conversation with her and really, I mean, everything that she has studied and researched. I mean, that's the beauty of it. These are things that no one's researched, courage or vulnerability, but she has really researched it. And to the point, there's scientific evidence around this. conscious. And I think that's the beauty of it. So I'd love to sit down with her.
If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be?
You don't have to be perfect to succeed. In fact, fail and fail your way to success.
Yeah, fail is another one of those huge 4-letter words. I had a guest on a while back and she said, we need to learn to make friends with failure. Yeah. So important because that's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we expand. You have to fail forward. Yep. The only failure is if you give up.
Yep.
That's it.
Exactly right. Yep.
Lastly, Cindy, if you were to deliver your last 30-second speech to the world, your corner of the world, your tribe, your people, what would that last 30 seconds sound like? What words of wisdom would you impart?
Well, I would say to be the kind of person that you would have wanted in your darkest moment to be by your side, and be that person to everyone every day. I know that's difficult, but the reason I say that is because we all have the ability to offer compassion and empathy and an understanding. And if you can be that person, whether it's to a stranger, I love to just strike a conversation, even if it's just, how's your day going? I've made friends with homeless people in the past. That acknowledgement is so important. And that's something we all can offer as human beings, is kindness and empathy. And you'll never know if your smile, if your words of encouragement, or just your acknowledgement, literally your acknowledgement, has given them the strength to live.
Beautifully said. I love it. It's so important. Kindness and empathy are such important things in life. And I think there needs to be a course on how to be a good human, how to be kind, because like you said, a smile to somebody could completely change the trajectory of their entire day. So you could save a life with a smile, to be honest.
Yes, you could.
And to take the time to have a conversation with someone, it doesn't cost you anything except your time. That's it.
Yep.
It's simple.
It is very simple.
Cindy, thank you so much for this incredibly inspirational, thought-provoking, important, and beautiful conversation. I applaud the work you're doing. I think it's incredible, and we need to just continue to have the conversation. Thank you so much for your time, for being here with me today, for sharing about your own personal journey, for sharing about the beautiful light you put out into the world through the work you do. It has been an absolute honor and pleasure to have you on the show. I'm grateful to have you as a member of the Empowerography community. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it as well, Brad. This has been very enjoyable for me today as well.
Wonderful. Once again, my name is Brad Walsh, host of your Empowerography podcast. Today, my guest has been Cindy Tank Murphy. She is a best-selling author, an international speaker, and a mental health advocate. Thank you so much, Cindy. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. If you haven't yet, please be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and share with all your friends. You can find me at visuphoria.ca and follow me on Instagram at Empowerography Podcast and on Facebook at Empowerography. Please join me next time for another inspirational story from yet another amazing woman.